Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Los Angeles. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas of the Hall of Fame. And we are underway in our top 8 here. Brad Nelson in the third seed with Mardu mid-range, a deck we haven't really seen a whole lot of. There was some of it at the Pro Tour, but now if Brad finds himself in the top 8 with it, facing a deck that we're quite accustomed to seeing, and I think we're going to have to grow very accustomed to seeing here. Carlo Falcis playing Obzon mid-range, and he's got a nice start.
And Brad getting to play first,
Fleece
of course, because he was third seed versus Carlos being the sixth.
Uh-oh, did he just miss a land drop there?
It looks like.
Has Brad missed his third land drop, and is he just immediately, yes, he immediately took 3 damage from Fleece main line. What's the follow-up play? It's a Sylvan Caryatid, so he gets a bit of a reprieve, but he is going to need to find mana very quickly. He doesn't find it, but he does find a 2-drop in Seeker of the Way. That might help him out down the line, but this is going to become really bad really quickly.
I'm skeptical. He is about to get rocked. I mean,
yes.
If Carlos has an untapped 5th land and a Wingmate Rock here, that's just almost just game.
That's exactly what he has.
I also like how Carlos taps the Lion one way and the Caryatid the other way. I like that when it was uneven. Because I'm sure no one watching would have minded.
No, I believe that Brad Nelson just drew a mountain here, which is kind of what he wanted 2 turns ago or last turn. Yeah, it is. It is a beautiful sight for Brad Nelson, but is it just way too late for him here? He's down to 14.
It is a sweet mountain, but it is, again, a little too late. Even if he could do something like cast 2 Chain to the Rocks. I mean, he's got the capability of doing that. And then attack for 4 lifelink. Maybe he's not in a horrible spot if he does that. Or even just Chain to the Rocks plus Lightning Strike.
Okay.
But if he had a Lightning Strike, I think he would have cast it earlier on the Fleece main line.
So he did. Yeah, you're totally right.
Because he had the Seeker, but he had a turn where he had 2 mana untapped and the line came down. So it looks like Brad has at least 1 chain. He tapped a 1 white mana and then untapped. So all he needs is 2 chains and he'll be able to rock out here. But if he doesn't have that, I mean, he's really far behind.
Deep in the tank here, trying to figure out how the heck to get himself out of this mess. He kept a 2-lander and just didn't hit for 2 turns. And this is how Standard can go sometimes. Even a Obzon mid-range deck put up 3 power on turn 2 and now 6 power on turn 5. And Brad's going to chain, taking out, interestingly here, the Fleece Mane.
That makes sense. I mean, if he doesn't have a Lightning Strike and doesn't have another answer, a monstrous Fleece Mane land is also something he can't really deal with.
Okay.
Though Crackling Doom does get that. I assume he doesn't have Crackling Doom, or at least, because basically one of the ways Brad gets back into this game is he plays a 3-mana spell this turn and then next turn draws a 4th land and plays a chain plus a 3-mana spell.
Right, but that's also based on the fact that Carlo doesn't do much here, right?
Well, that's already a given. I mean, Brad, he can't beat anything, and much less a second Wingmate Rock.
Right, and that isn't the reality, unfortunately, for Brad Nelson, as Carlo had a second copy of Wingmate Rock, which is going to end the game. Those are deck lists. The players do get to take a chance to look at their opponent's deck lists as they go to
and
to
I've always been a big proponent of giving out deck lists in Constructed, because, look, everyone knows basically what everyone else is playing already, and so all that not giving out deck list does is punish the people who don't have friends who can scout or who haven't been able to do that. And I think it's just better, especially since you also don't want to punish the people who go on stream and Brad's been playing in the feature match for a while, so people know that he's playing Mardu, whereas his opponent, he saw some time in the feature match too, but has not necessarily been on stream. There's no reason to penalize Brad for that. You should just give both players deck lists. Yeah,
it's the only fair way to do it. I mean, it makes it a little clunky here where people feel compelled to study the list during sideboarding. I mean, in an ideal world, you'd still be under the strict constraints of some type of sideboarding clock. But in the reality in the top 8 is that they'll take a little bit longer and they'll make sure to get the lists, and it is just the most fair way to do it.
Well, and also people aren't going to be unreasonable. They're going to be asked to move on if they take too long, and people generally don't take too long. They want to play Magic. So it looks like we've got Daniel Scheid, the lone red-green devotion. In fact, the lone devotion deck in the top 8, a far cry from last season, and he's got a Stormbreath Dragon out, which even it got to attack before Siege Rhino came out and is going to continue attacking. Stormbreath's looking pretty good here. Especially if people are leaning more towards Obzon Charm over, extra copies of Hero's Downfall or Murderous Cut, then, Stormbreath Dragon gains a lot of ground.
There's an Urborg for Chris Goldsmith. And he's got an answer for Stormbreath here, and for Pelucranos. Unfortunately, his Rhino's going to bite it as well.
Yeah, I would have just tried to do the free roll attack with the Rhino first.
Looks like his opponent maybe showed him something. What did he have? A burn spell?
Potentially that Crater's Claws.
Crater's Claws.
I couldn't exactly see, but that's the sort of thing you'd flash. Like, look, I've got the Fireball.
Okay.
So that will end that.
Daniel Scheid wins the first game there of his quarterfinal match, and there's the deck list we were just talking about. So back over to our main feature match here. So Brad Nelson had what looked to be a pretty nice hand, but unfortunately was not able to find his third land until the fifth turn, and he got summarily punished for that. Carlo Falcis just put it to him, and Brad's going to have to come up with something better than that if he's going to win game two.
Yeah, I mean, when you miss your third land drop, it doesn't really show a whole lot about kind of what the matchup is like or what your deck is capable of.
Nope.
So this is a pretty close matchup, and again, Chain of the Rocks is one of the ways that Brad can get an advantage here. Though I do like the Domokun sleeves though that Carlos is rocking. Those are pretty sweet.
They're pretty sweet, yeah. It's hard not to notice those.
They look pretty ferocious too. That's part of the key. They're not as intimidating or great as Brad's sleeves, but they do the trick.
All right, so let's see if Brad has a better opener here.
Well, Carlos does not, at the very least.
Okay. I do believe Brad's kept. He should be on the play, so he should have had to make that decision.
Yeah, Brad's kept his hand. I mean, given Scrylands and Temples, it's pretty easy to, or Scry Temples, it's pretty easy to keep two landers. I mean, even without that, Brad's keeping a deck that really needs three lands to operate. Most two landers on the play are actually going to be decent. So
okay.
I can't really fault him for that.
All right. I wonder if we can go turbo mode right now. Is there a button for that somewhere here?
Yeah, one of the things I miss about doing GP coverage as opposed to Pro Tour coverage is seeing what's in players' hands instead of having to derive it.
Right.
Though deriving is interesting too, because it is interesting to theorize about what someone would do if they had a certain card, like why is he attacking this way? But, sometimes just like seeing what's in Brad's hand and trying to see what the game is going to play out is interesting too. If the game turns into more of a race than an attrition battle, then mulliganing is not as punishing, but when you're trading card for card over and over again, mulliganing is a lot worse.
Yeah, it is interesting how these decks are pretty set up well to play the attrition game, but man, we've seen some pretty serious races out of these type of builds too. These mid-range decks sometimes just put out haymakers 3 or 4 times in a row, and it looks like Brad Nelson, his shuffling skills are fully deployed here as Carlo's going to go down to 5. Now, we didn't really get much of a game one. And, I think Brad's probably hoping we don't get much of a game 2 here if he can just sort of run over Carlo, who's now going down to 5 cards and hasn't kept yet either. So we're...
Yeah, and there's still a lot of 5-card hands that can do fine here, but yeah, obviously going down to 5 against an opponent on the play in a very similar matchup is not really what you're looking for.
Right. Yeah, rules of card economy state. But he's on the draw, right? Not the end of the world.
Given that he's mulliganing at 5, he'd rather be on the draw. Not by a lot. I still think being on the play is good, but being on the draw when you're at 5, you want to hit your third land drop. You want to make sure you have a couple things to cast. I mean, they're both playing 3-color decks, so that's always a point of concern. Like, it's always possible to end up with just 2 colors worth of mana.
All right, let's see if Carlo can find a 5-card hand to keep here. There's 5. We're underway. Ideal start here for Brad Nelson. The Nomad Outpost is going to give him access to all 3 colors of his mana on a turn when he wasn't doing anything anyway. He draws a Chain of the Rocks. That's going to come in handy later. A second Nomad Outpost means no 2-drop, but that's not a big deal for his deck. It really starts operating at 3.
And Carlo instantly put Glare of Heresy on top with Temple of Malady, which is interesting. He must really fear Butcher the Horde, Elspeth, Wingmate Rock, Soren. So it makes sense.
It does hit basically everything Brad's doing, right? Even his removal sometimes.
Yeah, and Brad's got a pretty slow start. It looks like
Glaire's going to take down, wow,
Seeker here.
Seeker of the Way.
Choosing to keep Drown in Sorrow and I believe Hero's Downfall in hand still. So Carlo's on the trade 1-for-1 plan, which is not really where you want to be after a mulligan.
Right. Randy, what's going on our side
Yeah.
tables?
You get to see the good and the bad of the boss slide deck on the back tables. Dennis Ulanov just completely rolling over Tomato Ryuichi. But on the other side, Isaac Sears is able to play Soren, plus it, attack for 19, game 19.
Ooh!
And yeah, Eric Pay starting to have to block, so
That's done.
That one's over.
By the way, speaking of being over, we're getting close here. There's 6 damage coming in, though if Carlo can find a way to deal with Soren here, he will only be facing down a vampire.
Well, yeah, he killed the Soren with
Excuse
Hero's
me, not
Downfall.
Soren, I meant Sarkon, sorry.
He's got Sarkon, so if he has a second removal spell, he's not in terrible shape. But if he doesn't, then, well, he is.
Yes. And Fleecemane Lion is not the name of the game here.
Yeah, he's got right now in his hand Drown in Sorrow, which is not a card you're super excited about, especially since Sarkon doesn't care about it in any way, shape, or form.
Brad's got a Chain of the Rocks, but does he even care about the Fleecemane Lion at this point?
Not a huge amount, no. And what Carlo's hoping that will happen is, I guess he takes 6 going to 8 and then makes a Wingmate Rock, but it looks like Sarkon might actually just go for quick value. Brad just guaranteeing he's going to get a 2-for-1 by using Sarkon to shoot down the Fleecemane Lion.
Right. He gets in there for 2 with the Vampire. Gonna send it back. Eric draws a land for the turn. He's got the Drown in Sorrow, Wingmate Rock, and now a Llanowar Waste.
And it might be time just to use the Drown in Sorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, killing the 2/2 is reasonable in a turn where you don't really want to play Wingmate Rock. You also aren't really doing much else. You could also just play Wingmate Rock, because that will threaten the Sarkon.
And also take care of the 2/2 nicely.
He also is not very close to having raids, so I suppose I kind of like just playing Wingmate Rock here. It's not a play you're super excited to make, but I think it's the one you have to make. Of course, Brad with the Glare of Heresy and Chain of the Rocks in his hand. I mean, this is going to be another quick game.
Yes.
Oh, and Crackling Doom.
Wow,
so.
and Crackling Doom to bring Carlo down to 9. He's going to take 6 more here to bring him down to 3. And he put up a little bit of a fight, but similar to the first game in the sense that this is very one-sided.
Yeah, if Carlo draws a removal spell for a Sarkon, then we maybe get to continue the game. But if he doesn't, then this is his last turn.
Right. Okay.
Soren making a Vampire.
To start, it's not going to get it done, though. If that's his only play, then Brad Nelson's going to kill him.
Yeah, he's likely going to go for the kill, especially since there's not much you can have with 2 Pain Lands up. Because if you tap either of them, the Vampire itself kills you.
Right, so he could just go for Chain of the Rocks here pretty safely. And I think he just drew a Lightning Strike, too.
And that'll do it.
And that'll prompt the permanent. So here we go. Might as well make it exciting. Game 3. Let's hope that this last one is a real hard-fought game here. Brad Nelson got crushed in the first game and really kind of crushed his opponent in the second game there.
So Daniel Scheid is up a game here with his green-red Devotion deck, and I actually kind of like his spot in this top 8. If he can play, keep playing against Abzan with a deck that goes a little bigger than Abzan, that seems like a good place to be.
Yeah, that does seem nice. So is Daniel on the, kind of a Planeswalker version with like Xenagos and all of that stuff, or is he more like the heavy mono green? Now I can see now that he's got a Sarkon, so that kind of answered my question for me.
Well, from what I can see, he doesn't have a ton of Planeswalkers in his deck. He's got some, but he's not like, I would say a Planeswalker deck. It's just red-green like aggressive Devotion. It's got 5 Planeswalkers total, which is not a huge amount. It's 3 Xenagos, 2 Sarkon, but he's got 4 Lightning Strike and 3 Crater's Claws.
Oh, okay. So he is over in the red. Like, is he Hornet Queening here?
1 Hornet Queen, but 4 Stormbreath Dragon. So
I see.
he's got a lot of hasted attackers and a lot of fireballs and lightning bolts. So
I like
this is old school Magic.
Very assertive.
This is Sheep and Dragon Llanowar Elf Fireball Lightning Bolt
Yes,
Magic.
it is. R&D says we finally brought it back. It took 21 years, but we're here again. Nobody's playing any blue. Are there any blue decks in the
There's
top
not
eight
a
at all?
single blue spell or land in the top 8.
Whoa.
Well then. Though Daniel can make blue mana with Rattleclaw Mystic. So there is
We're
that.
not counting that. That's pretty telling about where the format's at right now.
Yes and no. I mean, you
Dig
actually
Through Time
you have
wasn't
to
good enough.
you can't just look at the top 8 because the top 8 isn't like that much more relevant than the top 16, which is actually not that much more relevant than the top 32. Because especially when you have people who didn't make top 8 with the same record as the top 8 or just a win behind, one win doesn't make a deck better or worse.
No.
So, but if you look at if you look at like the top 32 or top 16 and there's no blue, that starts to add up.
Sure. Especially over the course of multiple tournaments, right? I mean, once you get that sample size big enough, then you can start to actually make conclusions based on what you've seen. It is always tempting to take a little bit too much out of it. Still, it is an interesting point, though, that there's no blue cards here in the top 8. We haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah, that is. I mean, that's certainly something to mention, worth mentioning.
Yeah.
And it looks like Daniel Shai's just going to play another hasty creature. I mean, tapping 5, it just had to be a Storm Breath. Potentially attacking with both. I mean, Chris does have, a lot of mana up, so I think he's going to have a removal spell here, but still, this is dealing a lot of damage.
So we're not on the full 8 dragon plan here, though, for Daniel Scheid, though, right? He's a few short.
We're on 6, which is
6.
still a lot.
So 4 Storm Breath, 2 Sarkhan, then?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot.
Silence
That just
the
means-
Believers,
Oh, yes.
able to take out either of the dragons, choosing to take out the Storm Breath version. I want to see a Sarkhan Ultimate. We haven't seen that yet.
I saw it at the Pro Tour. I haven't seen it here. But Raphael Levy actually ultimated Sarkhan in the feature match area against Andrew Cuneo, I believe it was.
Oh, that's pretty good, because Andrew Cuneo was playing Blue Black control.
Correct, and he buried him. I mean,
Yeah.
it just once that went. You never miss a land drop again. You get to, for those that haven't seen it yet, Sarkhan, it lets you draw 2 extra cards per turn. So you draw 3. You have to discard your whole hand at the end of your turn, but it rarely matters because you just start deploying every single thing that you draw every single turn. And it turns out when you're playing 2 to 3 cards per turn, maybe a land and 2 spells, or 2 spells, or a spell and a land, every single turn you get ahead of your opponent very, very quickly. Is he going to go for it? Is there any incentive here? We don't have the life totals right there, but...
Well, one reason not to go for it is Daniel's got a lot of cards in hand, so he would have to discard like 3 cards this turn at the very least if he went for it. So I think he's just going to keep clocking with Sarkhan here.
Yeah, Oh, Abzan Charm's going to take it out, so he's not going to have the option. Yeah, the bottleneck ends up being your lands. You start hitting lands every turn after you ultimate Sarkhan, but if you've got 6, 7, 8 lands, then it becomes a lot more appealing to draw extra cards. But when you're only got 5 mana sources here, that's not quite good enough.
And Hostilities being, something with a bit of a drawback here for Chris. He could cast it, but he would lose 2 Caryatids and a Courser.
Yeah.
So it would be a 4 for 4. Not horrible, but it would put him unable to cast Elspeth, which is something that he would, I think, rather cast before you cast End Hostilities. That's a lot more impressive. Hostilities and then plussing Elspeth in the same turn is a lot better.
Yeah, that's a great position to put yourself in. The question is, how worried is he about Pelukranos here? I mean, if he knows he's going to end hostilities at some point, depending on if he hits his land drop here or not, he can start blocking with Caryatids or something. All right, there's Xenagos the Reveler.
And Daniel looking to draw lands here. He missed a few land drops. And there we go.
Another Pelukranos there.
So Daniel's got some good plays this turn, but he doesn't necessarily want to overextend into something like End Hostilities. It's got to be a card he's aware of at this point.
So Chris is at 14, Daniel's at 22 currently. And he's going to attack with Pelukranos.
And it looks like it's just going to eat another removal spell.
Another Silence the Believers.
And Chris is 1 mana short of doubling up there, killing the Courser as well, so it's kind of painful to cast that, but given you have Elspeth coming, it makes sense.
Okay.
So now Daniel has to balance the fact that Elspeth is going to get cast next turn most likely, but if you play too many creatures, you could just get Wrath.
That is a tightrope. It is pretty tough to walk, though. Xenagos does a pretty good job of that. It doesn't care as much about Wrath here.
No, and by plussing, he can, Daniel can put another spell out and a third Pelucranos.
All right.
One on top, one in play, one in the graveyard.
They're all over the place. And yes, Pelucranos is legendary, so slightly awkward for him.
And this makes Elspeth a lot more awkward as well.
All right, let's get back to our main feature match. We are in Game 3, Brad Nelson versus Carlo Falcis. We have not had a very competitive game so far out of this match, and hopefully we get a good one here. Some missed land drops for Brad Nelson in the first game led to his demise.
Some missed card draws for Carlo in the second.
He had to mulligan down to 5 and wasn't able to recover from that as Brad had a nicely assertive draw. Randy, what's going on in the side tables?
Well, it took 15 rounds before Tamada Ryuichi lost 1 round, but now he's lost 2.
Ooh, out of the top
Dennis
8?
Ulanov had Eidolon of the Great Revel on turn 2, and Ryuichi wasn't actually taking damage from that because he was discarding for not having any lands to even try to cast spells. Very quickly down 2-0, and Ulanov takes 1 boss slide deck into the semis.
All right, thank you, Randy. Haven't seen a lot of action here yet. 3 mana for each player, but no play. Well, there's an Obzon Charm to draw some cards for Carlo Falcis and try to keep him ahead, at least in the card race.
And now what Carlo really wants to do is, play something that makes Brad's, next plays not as relevant. Like trading a Siege Rhino for a Kraken Doom is fine. It would have been nice if he could play something like a Courser and play an extra land just to try to get a little bit more value. But given that he's got a Siege Rhino, it's a good play. I assume it's going to get killed here because if Brad's not killing it here, then it puts him in a not great spot. So yeah, Brad does have the 3 mana removal to kind of keep this game going at the pace that both players expect it.
Right. It is very much punch counter punch though in standard right now. And you need to be able to hit every single one of those. There's Crackling Doom to take it down on end step. Draw step, no land here for Brad Nelson.
No, but he's got a lot of spells to play here, and even it looks like Carlo's going to just keep running out Siege Rhinos. Generally a good plan with that.
Seems like a very, very good plan against really anything. There's another Siege Rhino. Who needs to attack anyway? Brad Nelson's going to drop down to 13 off of that.
So trading Crackling Doom for Siege Rhino is still a fine deal.
Mm-hmm. And there's a land drop right on time for Brad Nelson. He missed 1, but he's back on track. And
he's
still
got all
just passing
5s
the turn
though.
anyway.
So
okay, so he needs to hit another one then.
And it looks like Carlo's going to have a decent turn here with a Sorin plus a Fleeceman line.
Oh, you mentioned that earlier as sometimes the turning point in these mid-range matches is when somebody gets to play 2 great spells in 1 turn.
Right, and both players have Wingmate Rock too, and both players get rewarded pretty heavily if they're the first to play their Rock.
And Brad really doesn't have the ability to kill both of those permanents on end step here, right? He can maybe have a creature removal for the Fleet's Mane. Or something
I don't know if he's run out of instant speed removal yet. There's a pretty good chance that he has.
Okay. And that's a great turn there for Carlo. Being on the play here is going to help him out quite a bit.
So Brad really needs to be able to play a spell end of turn here. The Crackling Doom would be fantastic. It would kill Sorin and the Lion, but the Crackling Doom's both 8 Rhinos. So
yeah.
If Brad doesn't have a spell here and then doesn't draw a 5th land, he's not in great shape. I mean, he's got Chain to the Rocks, so he can at least play something next turn, but that's not the position he wants to be in. It looks like he's got the Murderous Cut, so he can at least kill the Lion if he wants to.
Correct. All right, Murderous Cut takes down Lion. So he did have something. Maybe it wasn't perfect. He finds the 2nd Chain to the Rocks on the top of his deck.
Just not really what he was looking for, but I think because of Wingmate Rock, you're now forced to use removal spells on smaller creatures than you would normally.
Yeah, looks like he agrees. He's tapped this other mana here, though.
Oh, he's got the Vanishing Light as well.
Too.
Right,
okay.
That was a good turn. Brad actually might be ahead here.
Wow. So 2 spells for Carlo, excuse me. And Brad answers all of them, and there's Thoughtseize to reveal Wingmate Rock Elspeth, Sarkon,
Yeah.
and another chain.
A
of the
removal
rocks.
spell, and then 3 cards that cost 5 or more mana that are very strong. So
Wow,
Brad really needs a land.
he
Carlo,
needs a land.
I would not be inclined to take Elspeth or Chained as much as I would to take like Sarkon, for example. But it really depends on what kind of removal spells Carlo has access to.
Yeah, he still has like I think 3 cards in his hand, so he's going to have to tailor his decision based on
Because,
that.
I mean, as usual, Elspeth is one of the more dangerous cards, but Brad's 2 lands away from casting it. Wingmate Rock's also very dangerous, but Brad doesn't have an attacker. Sarkon, in general, does a pretty good job of dealing with
I would
things.
take Sarkon, yeah. Because Sarkon, he can play that, attack, and then set up the Wingmate Rock potentially. Wingmate Rock by itself is much less good. Ooh, there's a Fleece Main line, no follow-up for Carlo, which is going to force that other Chain of the Rocks.
Which
out of
he knew
Brad.
was coming.
He knew it was coming, but he makes him do it here, and Brad does not hit that land drop either. He's also drawn a spell, though. Ideally not a 5-drop for Brad Nelson. Let's see what Carlo has for his follow-up play.
Looks like a Rakshasa.
And this is one of the strengths of it, is that you can play it late in the game as a 2-drop, and it's still very powerful, though I do see he's got 2 planes on the battlefield here. And those are not going to work with Rakshasa Death Dealer, so he probably can only pump it. Yeah, he can pump it twice right now.
And Brad's in an awkward spot where I think he's going to have to cast a Wingmate Rock unless he's drawn something better. And then when Carlo attacks, he can either block and get his rock eaten, or know that Carlo, has a shot of casting a Wingmate Rock with Raid. That being said, I don't think Brad can block here very well. Carlo's going to have a parade of Wingmate Rocks here in a second. He's finally been able to stick a creature. He's been trying the whole game.
Now, Brad Nelson doesn't know that Carlo has a Wingmate Rock, but clearly was playing around it earlier and will continue to do so if he can. Ooh, there's another Thoughtseize, though, for Carlo. Falcis is going to have to reveal a hand of end hostilities along with Elspeth. Oh, look at Brad. He had it. He was going to let him do it. He's going to let him play a Wingmate Rock, and he was going to blow him out.
Yeah, Brad has to be thinking of Wingmate Rock, and it's one of the cards that makes the most sense, so Carlo's going to just go ahead and pump the Rakshasa.
Yeah, take your free card off of the deal. I mean,
this makes
Wingmate
Elspeth
Rock
a
will
lot
be there.
better. And so Brad's really banking on drawing the 6th land to play Elspeth this turn.
He drew another Wingmate Rock.
So he's in the same position as last time.
Yeah.
The only difference now is if Carlo has an untapped 7th land, which he really wants to wait on, Brad might, his chump block might be for nothing.
Looks like he's drawn an Obzon Charm to complement the other 2 Wingmate Rocks in Carlo's hand. Yikes.
I still like attacking here with the Rakshasa.
I mean, he's just, if Death Dealer is just straight up eating creatures, just taking cards right off the battlefield, you can't really beat that for 2 mana.
I like the block from Brad last turn. I don't like it as much this turn because, again, if you think Carlo has Wingmate Rock, if you're like 100% sure, 90% sure, if Carlo has an untapped, 7th land here, the chumping accomplishes nothing, and then you're in a much worse spot.
Okay, and he does have 3 cards in his hand as well, so there's entirely possible that Carlo has that untapped land. Go for it, Randy.
So Isaac Sears had the Drown in Sorrow against Eric Pay's boss slide deck in game 2.
That seems good.
Did not have the 3rd land.
Oh no.
Yeah, he only got about 2 tries at it, and he was dead by turn 5. They're going to game 3 now.
Okay. Thank you. So looks like Brad agreed with you, Luis, and decided not to block there. But there it is, the first of what could be 2 Wingmate Rocks coming from Carlo Falcis' hand. And Brad Nelson has to pass a turn back with 2 cards in hand, one of them being Elspeth.
It looks like he didn't even draw a way to, to play Elspeth this turn. He's going to have
This is lethal, right?
He has to have a way to kill one of Carlo's creatures, and even then, I think he's not going to be able to come back from this.
Just feels like he slipped slightly behind, and then the 2 well-timed Thoughtseize really kind of stripped away the game plan for Brad.
Yeah,
This is
the
3,
second,
6,
yeah,
7,
taking
8.
Sarkon and End Hostilities are both very good.
Is it not lethal? Maybe he's not actually at 7 there.
It is lethal. I think Carlo's just making sure of that, forcing Brad to play whatever spell he has, and then potentially pumping the Rakshasa if he needs to.
All right, well, there's a Crackling Doom for 1/2 of a Wingmate Rock, unless Carlo wants to get rid of his Death Dealer.
But now we can make the Death Dealer a 4/4.
Yes, and that is lethal.
Looks like he's choosing just to settle for taking Brad at 2 and playing Courser. This gives Brad a turn to draw a End Hostilities and potentially get back into this game.
That would be interesting. The Death Dealer is open, but he doesn't find it, and Carlo Falcis extends into the semifinal round, defeating Brad Nelson here. So Mardu mid-range out. We have one Obzon mid-range that has moved through. We have one mono red that has moved through.
So it's going to depend on whether Daniel has taken the red-green devotion up to the next round. Looked like he was ahead in that game we left. I mean, his opponent had access to end hostilities and Elspeth, but Daniel had a lot of gas.
Yep. All right, let's take a look at our bracket and see what has happened in the time. So we've got Denis Ulanov with mono red defeats Ryoichi Tamada.
And Tamada had a really awesome run in the Swiss, but then ended up losing the last round of the Swiss and the first round of the top eights. Still, it's better to lose in the top eight than not make the top eight. So I don't think he can feel too bad about his performance this weekend. It was very impressive.
In his last two GPs, he's finished, eighth-ish and third, so not too bad.
And looks like this game is still going on. Daniel Scheid went through all the end hostilities, played his Hornet Queen, got it all drowned in sorrow.
Wow.
I do find it unrealistic that Hornets would drown because they fly.
Yeah, that's true.
But
yeah, we need a flavor ruling on that one. Though I see
Xenagos
is still partying.
He's kind of reveling on the bottom of the screen there.
Yeah, he doesn't mind about being drowned. Nothing's going to stop him.
And both players have a lot of cards in hand. For how light the game is, they both done a pretty good job of not drawing too many lands and just drawing all spells.
Satyr token from Xenagos is going to hit the red zone here, and not a bad follow-up
Looks
play.
like, yeah, Daniel boards into 2 more Hornet Queens after board, which is pretty awesome.
That makes more sense. So he's got Hornet Queen plus a Satyr plus another Satyr coming next turn, and Chris Goldsmith down a game here is up against it. I mean, it looked pretty good when he drowned in sorrow last turn to sort of clear the board and maybe give himself a shot here, but he didn't have any follow-up play at all, and Daniel Scheid certainly did.
Yeah, it looks like an army in a can here. Hornet Queen plus Xenagos, just one card, put 6 more cards on the board, basically.
Yeah. You said that Daniel Scheid's running Crater's Claws too?
Yeah,
How much mana can he make next turn?
Next turn he's going to be able to make a lot of mana with Crater's Claws.
17 or 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
And Siege Rhino does not look mighty in comparison to that. Especially given the life point differentials. Daniel at 25 and Chris at 8.
Yeah, we finally found a board state where Siege Rhino isn't absolutely amazing, and it's still pretty good. Yeah, like you said, though, a bunch of cards in hand there for Daniel. Right?
And this is actually just lethal. I mean, Chris has to have a way to answer one of the creatures, otherwise he just dies.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh no, he went up to 11 from the Rhino. The life totals were post or pre-Rhino, not post-Rhino.
Right.
But Crater's Claw is still lethal.
Jeez, Crater's Claws might have been lethal on its own with Xenagos, but he had multiple avenues to victory and picks up the win here, 2 games to 0. So another Obzon list down.
Yeah, it was half the top 8, but it's so far it's lost 3 of its matches.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sorry, lost 2 of its matches. Carlos actually advancing, and then with Isaac Sears and Eric Pay in game 3 here to see if Obzon, it actually could still be half the top 4.
It could be, yeah.
But we were facing a potential 4 Obzon in the top 4, but that's not going to happen.
You can see how the top 8 has developed so far. We only have one more quarterfinal match still outstanding. Looking down on the lower right, that was the match we just watched, the second-ranked Daniel Scheid, who, interestingly, found himself with pretty clear of the rest of the pack, but pretty far behind Tamada in that last match, and ended up having to play to make it into top 8, even though he was, multiple points clear of the next person behind him. But he beat him, made it in, and now he's made it all the way to the semifinals. He will be facing Carlo Falcis. So green-red monsters versus Obzon mid-range. We just saw that same matchup, and Daniel looked like he had no problem getting by Goldsmith, so that could be good. And here's our last match. Isaac Sears on the left, Eric Pay on the right. Eric is playing a highly aggressive deck, really just the most aggressive type deck that we can see these days, just the most all-in, mono-red, 1-drops, boss slide deck.
Yeah, and this is one of the matchups where being on the player job matters more than others. I mean, it's obviously relevant, but Looks
Wow.
like Isaac is just, he knocked on his deck and didn't play a land on turn 2.
That cannot be good. Eric Pay's deck can absolutely smash you if you stumble. Like, even if you have a decent
Also if you
draw, it
don't,
can
but
beat you.
especially if you do.
But especially if you do.
We might have neither player playing a land on turn 2, by the way.
Yeah, it looks like Eric might be digging for a mountain with his Dragon Mantle here. He wouldn't leave Ulcerate in, would he?
I wouldn't think so, but you know, it actually might save you more than 3 damage if you play it. Yeah.
He doesn't have it.
So,
But he did get to make a token there, and he's going to attack for 2 damage.
well, one of these decks can operate on one land a lot better than the other.
Yes, that is very true. Pass the turn back. All right, this is a big one. Is this a land? It is. It's even an
Windswept Heath.
untapped land, too. Okay, Isaac
But
Sears in
still
business
says
and
God.
ships the turn back.
It looks like a one-land hand that had Drown in Sorrow. Drown in Sorrow being one of the best cards, it makes sense, but it still is the sort of thing that when you keep a one-lander, miss a land drop, then hit your second land drop and still don't play anything, it is kind of funny.
Look at Isaac Sears cheering for Eric to not draw a mountain, but he did. Sorry, Isaac, you're going to have to play a real game here, buddy.
Well, if Isaac draws his 3rd land and can cast Drown in Sorrow, it has to be an untapped land that produces black, of which he does have plenty. That will be a pretty big shift. Otherwise, Eric's going to run away with the game pretty quickly. It doesn't take too many turns of whacking with all your creatures before your opponent dies.
Yeah, he's also growing his board state here thanks to the Acrone Crusader there. Whenever it gets targeted, you get to make a 1/1 haste soldier, which is what you see there, that token.
Looks like a Jacob Wilson to me.
Jacob Wilson token, yeah.
And if Eric can set up a Hammer Hands on a Monastery Swift Spear, he could end up in a spot where Drown doesn't wipe his board. So that actually should be a priority for him.
So that's what he should be thinking about. Also, he knows that Isaac has missed a land drop here and is desperate.
Well, you have to think, why would my opponent keep this hand? So you have to kind of figure that out. Figure out what sort of plays from him would make you lose this game. Now that he's so far behind, just playing like a random 3-mana spell is not going to do it unless it's Drown in Sorrow. So that's the reason I would be inclined to Hammer Hand here. But it looks like Eric's just going to go with smashing for 3 and potentially playing a Frenzied Goblin.
Wow, there's a Frenzy Goblin. Now he's taking on some risk here, and he's not going to be punished for it. It was Siege Rhino off the top.
And I think that was the turn. I think this turn, Eric's just going to deal too much damage and have too many burn spells left in hand. He's got multiple lightning strikes in hand, stoke the flames. Like, even if Isaac then clears the board next turn by drawing the land, Eric is just going to have dealt too much damage and have too many burn spells left.
Yeah, that was the window. Eric, he has shown that he's willing to take risk. He knows this kind of deck demands that. And here's a Hammer Hand to make another token. It's also going to trigger the Monastery Swift Spear here. What else does he have? Another Hammer Hand? Jeez, another Hammer Hand. He is going wide here. And he's going to attack for 1, 2, 3, 4,
like
5,
10.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, I got there a little.
5 is the life total, and that means that in 2 turns, Eric can go Lightning Strike, and that's completely ignoring his board state, which might go away here. No, he did draw, but that's not, yeah, nice hand. And Eric says, that's cool. Do I win? He does, and that's going to do it. Eric Pay is our victor here. So we have a mono red mirror coming up.
That's what it looks like.
Oh man,
that one should be quick, or maybe not. I mean, I could see it taking a little bit of time as too many cards trade off here.
I've seen that before, where I've seen mono red